Welcome to Deep Thought, being in the moment. You know what? Regardless of your philosophical path, your spiritual path, regardless of your socioeconomic situation, regardless of your race, creed, ethnic group, subculture, the very powerful thing that anyone can do is learn how to be in the moment, how to be in the now. And here's something everybody can test out what I'm about to say. People, most of the population have trouble being in the moment, right? Being in the moment, just feeling the moment, right? Very few. Most people are either they're thinking about what has happened, or they thinking about what is going to happen. Even if they're doing something at that moment, in the back of their mind, they're thinking about the future, or they're thinking about the past. Most people. Now, depending on what you're doing, you're in the moment. Depending on what you're doing. Like if you're in a customer service position, you might be dealing with somebody. And ironically, not even having sex are a lot of people in the moment. And I'll get to that in a second, right? But most people, see, being in the moment means you're right there. You're not thinking about what's happened in the past. You ain't thinking about what's going to happen in the future. You're right there. You're present. You're looking at someone, right? Now, here's a problem with not being in the moment. When you think about the past, yeah, many people will remember some happy moment, but most people, when they start thinking about the past, they actually are focused on something bad that happened, and then they want to change it. And because it was bad, that's actually causing depression. So when you thinking in the past, you think about that bad moment, you getting depressed because you thinking, well, I could have did this, I could have did that, or because of those past things that led you to where you are now, so you're depressed. When you look at people who are depressed, a lot of times it's because of what they're thinking about in the past. Now, there's an argument that they could be depressed about something coming in the future, but that's more like anxiety. When people worry about something that hasn't happened yet, how many people have said, they about to do something, in school, you're about to take a test and you worried about it. That's anxiety. Or you worried about, you write a book or something and you worried about how people will receive it. That's anxiety. Or you're about to go on a date or something. That's anxiety. You're not in the moment. And speaking of dating, this is a very important thing. I've had some people show some interest in Tantra. A big thing with Tantra is being in the moment with your mate. When most people have sex, they're not in the moment. Many women, when they have sex, they're not there. Their minds are someplace else. They thinking about something that happened or something they need to do in the future. They're not there just feeling the sex, just right there to a point where time stops, right? And there's just something about that I'm going to get to in a second, and then some guys, most guys ain't thinking about anything in the past when they having sex, but then they so busy in the future, they ain't so much having anxiety, but they so busy trying to get to the end of it, trying to bust that nut, that they not in the moment in what's happening. Now with sex, this is a very basic thing anybody can test. And I'm hoping everybody listening gets to test it out. Like very soon. But you ever have sex like with somebody and you really into them for the moment, right? You into them for the moment. You ain't thinking about trying to bust a nut or trying to have an orgasm or thinking about that, you got to get the, kids' clothes ready for school or anything. You're just in the moment. And the sex itself might only last, the actual penetration and intercourse might last 15 minutes. But it can seem forever. You ever have that moment? It just seemed like it seemed like you, because you're in the moment. It seems like almost time stop. It can seem forever because you're not thinking about something. It speeds up when you're thinking about other things or you thinking about the future. Then it becomes fast because you're racing the clock, without even realizing it. Well, it's the same thing. Now, you transfer that to life. How many people really just, as they go along, they just in the moment? They just picking up anything. Very few. Here's an exercise, and this is something I used to do to relax myself. This is when I don't do it as much because the only park around here is, well, there's some parks, but like when I worked in downtown DC, it's stressful, kind of a little stressful what I'm doing, right? That I can't tell people about. So, on the way home, I would stop in like little parks. And even though it would be crowded, I would just sit there and focus. Now, well, not focus, but just be in the moment. I ain't worried about what I had to do going home. And with some of the stuff I did, it was in my best interest to forget about it anyway. But I would just focus right there, and I would pick up on everything. I would pick up on ants, squirrels, people walking by just in that moment. And there's a certain calmness. It's kind of like it's almost like you see everything. Because, see, people are so busy, they focus on the past or they focus on the future. They're not in the now. So they miss everything around them. It's like they're sleepwalking. In fact, even when people are driving, a lot of people, like if you drive someplace enough, you can drive half asleep. That's why some people can get through. I mean, seriously, they can hit the lights and everything because it's automatic. But they still got 1,000 things on their mind. And then they're there quicker. Like, I give you an example, right? I remember I had to pick up somebody. I say a woman who comes in the area sometime to visit, right? And I had to pick her up from a place, right? Now, I remember the first time I went a particular way to pick this woman up, right? I remember I was driving, and it was a new way. And it seemed forever to get there, right? It seemed forever to get there, right? So it seemed like a long way. But then the second time I had to do that another date, it was extremely quick. I mean, when I say extremely quick, it was almost like, damn, we here already? And I thought about the two things, and then I said, you know what? The first time, I didn't know where I was going. So I was paying attention to everything. I wasn't thinking about, oh, yeah, did I leave the stove on or something like that, or something happened. And I wasn't anticipating, evening's entertainment, as it were. I was just thinking about, I'm driving someplace I've never been before. I've been there, but never taken this particular way. So I'm paying attention to everything. I got to pay attention to street signs and all of this. I didn't have a GPS, so I was using one of those old, you print out the directions thing. So I had to pay attention to every little thing. I couldn't think about anything but what I was doing. So it seemed like a long time. But then once I got used to it, it was like, boom. And a couple times I had to drive over this place. It was like every time was faster and faster. That's because it was more used to my mind. I ain't had to think about anything, right? That's because I wasn't in the moment. But the first time I had to be in the moment. That's why if you do that any time, and usually first time you go on someplace, it always takes long because, some people say, well, you don't know where you're going. But it's like, no, you got to pay attention to everything to get there. And that's in life. How many people just when they walking down the street just take in everything? They ain't thinking about that person who did them wrong, or they ain't worried about, that interview they got in a week. They just sitting and walking. Their mind's just empty. In a way, it's a meditation. And it's amazing what you can notice, what you can see. Because I've noticed sometimes when I get in that mode, and it's not all the time because, I'm human. I ain't going to lie like I'm some spiritual guru that came down from the mountain just to talk with y'all. A lot of stuff I'm talking about, I'm still working on too. So, there's going to be sometimes I'm not in the moment. I'm thinking about, well, I don't get depressed easily, but I do be thinking about some happy moments. And of course, I think about the future. Wait a minute, y'all. Sorry about that. And this weather. But, Sometimes I think about the, future, but ironically, I'm like one of those eternally optimistic people. Always, I don't get any anxiety about what can happen 80% of the time. I'm still human. 80% of the time I got a positive thing. But I notice the times when I do be in the moment, you can see stuff. There's been times like I'll drive sometime, and because I'm in the moment, I'll see something and I'll be like, wait a minute, I done drove past this thing about 100 times. When did that thing get there? And it'd be a building or something, a sign or something that's always been there. And I'm like, how come I ain't noticed that? Or sometimes just being in the moment, I'll drive along and I'll see a house or something. I was like, wait a minute, I drove past here 1,000 times. I never saw that house. That's what I mean. A lot of times people are just so in the future or in the past, they're missing what's right in front of them. So that's one thing to practice, and it's tough. It's tough. It ain't like you. I put it like this: it would take a serious spiritual master probably years of meditation on some mountaintop to be just totally in the moment for an hour, a couple hours at a time. It would take a whole lot. And in fact, I'm gonna tell you something now too. And this is a little bit of, you know what? I'm going to do that the next one. That gives me something to do for tomorrow as far as like really thinking about something. Right? So, but anyway, just work on being in the moment. Work on being on right there, okay? Anyway, that's it. I want y'all to think on this. Peace and blessings.